Story 1. Aita for what? I told my mother-in-law when she asked to be in the delivery room. My husband, I'm 33, and I have 30, are expecting a baby boy. We're barely catching up with preparation and getting everything ready. His mom, kind of a busybody type but can be helpful at times, invited us for dinner and said she has an important request to make. She brought her request up at dinner table and blatantly said that she wanted to be in the delivery room with me when I give birth. I was taken back by her request. I really thought it had something to do with the nursery or diaper brand. I said I was sorry, but only my mom and my husband will be there. She made a face, got quiet for a while, then brought it up again. Just kept pushing, saying she is as much of a grandmother as my mom, and that she just wanted to be there for support and get the opportunity to see her grandbaby's first moments. My husband sided with her. I just stared at her and said, "It's all right. You can have the opportunity to be in the delivery room when it's your son who's giving birth." Everyone stopped eating and my mother-in-law left the table in an instant. My husband had me got up, although I wasn't finished with dinner, but he said we should leave. In the car, he lost it on me, asking what brain cell made me think it was a good idea to tell his mom that. I told him his mom kept pushing after I'd already given her an answer. Still, he said this was the most fucked up shit he heard me say. I replied that I was just frustrated and didn't mean to hurt her feelings and cause issues. He argued that if I don't want issues, then I should stop making shit difficult and just say yes to his mom's request. He then ranted about how it's his son too, and then said if his mom isn't allowed in there, then he won't be there too. Now I don't know if he really meant this or just said it in the heat of the moment, but it had me fuming. He's been ignoring me when I try to talk to him and act like I'm not in the room. I think I might have gone too far and created tension by responding inappropriately. Aita, edit. There has been some tension between me, my husband, and his family lately. This probably blew up because of built-up resentment. Story 2. Aita, for sending my twin daughters to separate schools. I 38 am the father of two girls, Elsa 5F and Anna 5F. They're physically identical, to the point where even my parents get them mixed up when we visit, and my wife's parents just call them the twins. This is extremely frustrating for me, and I don't think it's healthy for them. There are so many people where we live who see two girls with similar features and decide that makes them the same person, which they are not, and I'm beyond sick of it. I'm sick of getting two of everything at Christmas and birthdays, even though they have drastically different interests, personalities, and styles. I'm sick of hearing how they're creepy or look like dolls, or having my daughters referred to as a set. At their pre-K, the teachers always kept them together, and often called them the wrong names, which apparently led to some critical information being attributed to the wrong child. I'm done with this. They're going into kindergarten in September, and I'm enrolling them in different schools. They're both private Catholic schools, similar price range, similar prestige. As much as a kindergarten can have prestige, Elsa has a longer commute in the morning than Anna, but that's the only major inequality here. And honestly, I think the extra 15 minutes in the car is worth it in order to have my daughters each recognized as individuals at school. If they're not in the same class, teachers don't know them both, students don't know them both, then my girls will each get the same individual attention as any other kid. Rather than half, my wife thinks I'm setting them up for resentment if one school turns out better than the other, and that I'm being unfair to Elsa by having her commute be longer. I let my daughters choose which school each one wanted to go to, and Elsa chose hers because there's birds on the logo. I get that ideally, it would be great to send all our kids to the same school, but I also genuinely believe that giving them this experience apart from one another is crucial for their social and emotional development into emotionally stable adults. TLDR. Sending my daughters to separate schools of similar caliber in order to keep people from seeing them as extensions of one another, is this unfair? Relevant comment. As someone with a twin sister myself, I totally get where you are coming from. My sister and I were regularly called the twins, called by the wrong name, seen as a set, always had both of us included. This led to major issues in the differentiation process when we started wanting to be individuals. We also had a hard time learning how to create social bonds as teenagers, adults. Thankfully, my school was clever enough not to put us in the same classroom. There were tensions because of an equal amount of homework and friendships, etc. But compared to the times, people would confuse us and not see us as individuals. It was preferable. There is no right or wrong answer, but it's definitely healthy to give them space, although it might not always be easy. Be prepared to navigate jealousy and comparison because people will compare them anyway. There's a whole branch of psychology specializing in issues twins face. If you're interested, edit. Adding judgment because I forgot, NTA. Story 3. Aita for not helping girl I've been exclusively dating for 7 months that I cannot pay her $500 fine for bringing weed through airport. So I am 22, have been exclusively seeing this woman F28 for 7 months now. We spend every weekend together. And last month I took her on a trip to Jamaica for her birthday. I paid for everything on the trip and we had a great time. On the way back from the trip, she snuck some weed into her suitcase and we just so happened to be randomly searched at the airport in Florida. We got detained, missed our flights back home, and she was told that she had 30 days to pay off a $500 fine before it turned into a $5,000 fine. I told her I would help her with it. Fast forward ward to the past week. She requested $350 from me to pay for the hotel she bought for us in Florida and $250 for her court fees because she missed court for another case of driving uninsured and she had a bench warrant for her arrest. I send her the money both times, but that was the money I had set aside to help her with her $500 fine. She must pay the fine by Sunday, and I recently had issues with my car, so I had to take it into the shop to get it fixed, and I had to pay a lot for it. I need my car for work and gym. I texted her that I cannot help her pay for her fine because I had already sent her money that month and I had to get my car fixed, and she was very upset with me. She lives with her father, so I suggest that she ask for his help to pay the fine. Also, she did not want to see me this weekend because I told her I must go to a podcast. I'm on Friday and I would be able to see her Saturday. We have a very strong bond and are both into fitness and have helped her with bills multiple times in the past before, but it just seems like I'm doing too much. Especially because she was the one that got herself into that situation with bringing illegal substances weed back from Jamaica. Story 4. Aita for telling my wife that it's time to put her grandmother in a nursing home. My 39F wife 38F grandmother 84F has been living with us for the past year after her husband and caregiver passed away from a broken hip. Her grandfather never really made any arrangements for what would happen to his wife should he die before her. My wife is very close with her grandparents, and immediately following her grandfather's death, she offered to take care of her grandmother in our home so she wouldn't have to be put in a facility, as no one else in her family really had the space or money. I'm still kindly pissed that she did that without talking to me first, but at the time I knew how hard she was grieving her grandfather's death and I didn't want to start an argument or cause conflicts with any of her family members. I love my wife's grandmother, but she has been nothing but a burden to take care of the past year. She's severely diabetic and has to take 13 different medicines at different times of the day. She can only eat certain foods, which means me and my wife have to cook way more often. We have to constantly monitor her blood sugar. She can only walk very short distances with the use of a cane or walker, needs help dressing herself, bathing herself, going to the bathroom, climbing stairs, has doctor's appointments twice a week, etc. You get the picture, right? I know that I'm partially at fault for not saying anything and just going along with it, thinking that it wouldn't be forever, and my wife would eventually decide to send her to a facility. I'm a corporate lawyer, and I work remotely most days unless there's an important meeting or emergency that requires my presence at the office. That does mean that I'm at home most of the time to help out, but even though I'm remote, I'm still expected to be doing work during company hours. And me being constantly interrupted during the day has started to affect my work to the point that I find myself staying up later and later every night on my laptop playing catch up. And to be completely honest, patience is something that I never had, especially when it comes to dealing with the infirm. I just can't do it anymore, which is why, during breakfast this morning, I came clean to my wife and told her that I'm burnt out from being a caregiver. It's taking away from my career and our relationship, and it's time to consider other options for her grandmother. I tried to explain that it's too much on us, and we have the money for a very nice facility that has the resources to care for her 24/7. She blew up and called me a heartless monster for wanting to put such a sweet woman that's done so much for her family, community, and church in a nursing home. She stormed out of the house, got in her car, and drove to her best friend's house. Later today, she came back home and is now barely speaking to me. I'm starting to feel that maybe I was wrong. Aita? Story 5. Aita for not paying the very low fee for my BF's sister who pet sitted for us. My BF and I have two dogs. They're both indoor and outdoor dogs. We have a sort of latch on the back door of our house where it's locked into place with a normal key so that the back door is basically locked with a space for the dogs to run in and out of the house. The dogs were both brought up and are perfectly potty trained by it. My BF family decided to go away and invited me and my BF with. My BF's sister wasn't going with on holiday because she didn't have leave. I have to add that my BF's sister has some mental issues, but she's holding down a job for 2 years. She drives a car. She does team sports, and until recently, she has been the person who pet sits for her own family when they go away. Their dogs have passed recently. So my BF's sister said she'd pet sit for us. So we came to an agreement. Since she lives with her parents and they're leaving with the food in their house, that is, there would be no food in their house. We'd stock our house so she wouldn't have to buy food. Then, we also live 10 minutes from her work, whereas her parents live an hour from her work, so that's a bonus for her. On top of that, we'd pay 50% of the going rate for a pet sitter for that period. She was happy with the agreement. Now here's the problem. I was asking updates daily, but my BF's sister never mentioned a problem. Until the day we came back. Then she complained about how she had to come back from work every day to clean up their pee and poo in the house. I asked why would they do that when they have access to our fenced-in yard. It turned out that despite the fact that I showed her 5 times and sent her a video on how to set and lock the latch and made her lock and unlock it in front of me, she just straight up closed the door when she was out at work. Their water bowl is outside. Then because it was cold at night, she'd leave it locked. There was other stuff she had done that made me upset about paying her, but I changed my mind completely when I one day closed the back door for reasons. My one dog is very vocal about wanting to go outside. She always scratches the door and gives small barks at it. She was freaking out in a way I'd never seen her do before though. So when I let her out and she went and gulped water like she thought she might not see water again that day, which she'd also never done before, I realized that was a result of my BF's sister's actions. So I told my BF we're not paying his sister. She pretty much neglected and abused our dogs. She does not get money for it. My BF's on my side, but his family are calling me in a hole because dogs are meant to always be outside. She should have locked them outside instead. It's dead middle winter and she's got mental issues. You can't punish her for something like this. She herself got free food and to stay closer to her work. She still benefited from all of this. So Aita for not paying her? Story 6. Aita, for telling my brother's wife we can't all have rich parents like her and her siblings? My brother Nicky 25M is married to Lisa 24F. They were at my parents' house on Sunday for dinner and Lisa really annoyed the crap out of me, something that isn't new. And I said something in anger and I might be TA for it maybe. So Lisa has a wealthy family. They paid for her and her siblings' college expenses 100%. They paid for Nikki and Lisa's house. They paid for their wedding. They're paying for one of their sons' weddings this summer. They can afford all that. Lisa has always been very open, if trying to give her the benefit of the doubt, about it. She never hid the fact she came from money and was never shy about saying her parents pay for so much for her and her siblings. Lisa doesn't understand that we're not all that lucky. I'm 19F, work full-time, and I still live with my parents. We couldn't afford college. I didn't get the grades for a scholarship. Struggled enough through school that getting into massive debt for college when I could end up flunking seemed like a bad move for me. So I focused on working and I applied for a couple of training programs close to my parents' house so I could try and do better without risking debt for nothing. Lisa looks down on me so hard for living with my parents still and for not going to college. Sunday, she talked about how all her siblings attended college, how 3 of them are still in college, living there and doing just fine, how they'll be able to buy houses right out of college, how even she and my brother could do it. My parents said politely that not everyone can do all that. But then she talked about being 19 and not in college or living on my own, and how I should really try so much harder. I snapped at that moment, and I told her, we can't all have rich parents who can afford to pay our ways through college, for our weddings and for our houses. I told her my parents didn't have that kind of money and neither did I, so we were doing our best in this shitty fucking economy. Lisa told me I'm just lazy and making excuses and she stormed out. Nikki left a while after. and he was pretty quiet. Lisa used his phone to send me 30 texts 3 days later, demanding I apologize and tearing me a new one for not doing it without being told. And I know it was her because she texts in a very specific way. Story 7. Left her kid alone in a bookstore for hours. Thought it was totally normal. This here happened a while ago. I recently got reminded of it after meeting an old friend. Thought I'd share this story because I know after 13 years in retail or customer services that many people would think that what she did was okay. Back when I worked in a bookstore in a shopping mall, there was this little girl, maybe 5-6 years old, just sitting quietly in a corner, looking at the pictures of a book. At that moment, we had just noticed her because she was kind of hidden, tucked in a corner, and was totally silent. We asked where her parents were. She said her mommy was in the shop next to ours and told her to wait in the bookstore. We asked if she knew how long it had been, and she pointed to the hands of clock, where they had been when her mom left. It had been nearly 3 hours. I still can't believe that kid stayed quiet for so long, and I'm still kicking myself for not noticing her sooner. We took her to the mall security and they started looking for the mom. That brainless woman was in another mall next to ours, 3 smaller shopping mall on the same street next to each other. The mall security were shocked. One of them was a dad and went to get the kid biscuits and an apple juice. He knew right away she was really hungry after 3 hours all alone waiting. I never forgot how happy she was munching on those chocolate chips cookies and sipping her juice box. They called the police and child protection services. Me and my colleague waited with the kid. We actually had brought the book with us for some reason so she wouldn't be too scared. When the mom finally arrived, I swear, she did not understood at all why what she did was wrong and got pissed at us for going to security. She argued that her daughter was safe in our store and that she knew to not cause trouble. That got the police suspicious, because the kid was indeed very quiet and eerily well behaved. Looking back, it's kind of obvious that she was scared into being this quiet and calm child. The mother's justification was basically that since our store was selling books for kids and some toys, we were essentially babysitters and that we were the ones in the wrong for not wanting to do our job and watch the children. Needless to say, the cops were just totally done with her and took her to the police station. The kid went with Child Protection Services. The mom was kicking and screaming, threatening to sue us for slander and defamation. Of course, that never happened. But I hope that this little girl is now with better people, that she is now with people who love and cherish her. Story 8. Aita for getting annoyed at my still dying of cancer, ruining my wedding? I don't intend for the title to be so harsh sounding, but I don't know how else to put it. I'll also sound blunt, but I'm just posting the facts as presented. I'm marrying my partner A, who is from another country. Her sister B is dying of cancer. It is heartbreaking. She is a young mother and wife. Her diagnosis was about 4 years ago. When she was first diagnosed, she was given 1 to 2 years. Since we were in a different country, as she B remained in her home country with her family after her sister immigrated, we saved up some money and traveled to say goodbye to her. It was about the 1.5-year mark when we went to say goodbye, and we had gotten engaged soon beforehand. So we also went over to visit some of the family and asked them how long they needed to save to come across for our wedding, as our dollar is much stronger than theirs. They said 2 years, so that was agreed. We spent a month with her, laughing, lamenting, spending as much quality time as possible with her. By the end of the trip though, and with the chemo, she was exhausted. We said our heartbreaking goodbyes assuming to never see her again. And then she made a miraculous recovery, with a less than 1% chance of happening, which was awesome. We, along with her other family members who had also immigrated such as her father and brother, decided to put money together and support her to move over here to spend the rest of her life with us. That was about a year ago. Now my partner and I are getting married in 2 weeks. All of her family are coming to visit. It's a big joyous occasion with lots of travel. We've forked out thousands to help her family get here, and they're all staying for a month or so to celebrate our wedding and spend time with us. 2 weeks ago B got a bad diagnosis. They found lumps, and they said she has about a year left to live. She, for obvious reasons, didn't handle this well, and lashed out at us and our wedding, telling us not to talk about it around her. My partner has always kind of lived in her older sister's shadow, so she was really excited to be celebrated and made a fuss of for once. But B has told everyone about her diagnosis and has started saying, "This is the last time I will see most of you." Now the focus is completely off my partner and our wedding, and is absolutely about B. I feel heartless and heartbroken, but I'm frustrated by this. She has been going out of her way to make sure the people who are coming across who we have paid thousands for flights, not that it matters that much, are spending as much time with her as possible, as this is the last time she will see them. Now this period of joy and celebration has an undeniable black cloud hung over it, and people very obviously have stopped making my partner feel special. On top of this, B has maintained her stance that we not talk about our wedding around her. But the big issue is that B got married during COVID, so never got a father or daughter dance. She wants to have one at our wedding, after my partner has a father or daughter dance, with her own song, which to be honest sad as FCAC. I have said no, because my partner wanted to say no, but felt too guilty, so I had to be the bad guy. I also told my partner that if we're not to talk about our wedding around her sister, then I don't want her sister talking about her dying around us. Now I'm being called an asshole. I do absolutely feel like one. But I also feel like this is grossly unfair to ask us to brush our wedding under the carpet because of this. Aita? Story 9. Aita forcing my husband to choose between divorce and being a house husband while I work full-time to support the family. Long story short, my husband 37M used to work to support the family while I 36F stayed home taking care of our daughter. Last month, he lost his job and told me he felt exhausted and wasn't eager to do anything. I said okay and offered to work so he could look after our daughter at home and get some rest until he feels better. By the way, our daughter goes to daycare, so it's mainly some housework and picking her up. But he said no, he needs his time to be completely free. I got furious because this means either I work while also taking care of our daughter, or our family will face significant financial pressure. But I stepped back anyway and had a hell of a month doing everything while he hung out with his friends and played PS5. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore and told him he had to choose between being a house husband or divorce. He chose the first, but it felt forced. I keep questioning myself. Was I too harsh? Any good advice would be appreciated. Update. I never thought this would draw so much attention. I'm trying to read as many comments as I can, and I really appreciate your opinions, especially those pointing out things I should have told him and I didn't. I've decided to show him the post after work and see if we can have a real talk based on that. Again, thank you all. TR. I told my husband to choose between divorce and being a house husband. Aita. Update. I 36F showed my husband 37M the last post, and we had a talk. Then, without asking me, he invited my mother-in-law to come, even though he knows I've never gotten along well with her. So, I got off work, picked up my daughter, and showed my husband the post after she fell asleep. I told him that millions had seen it and made various points. I admitted that my ultimatum was an impulsive reaction and that I preferred having a calm discussion to work through this. He said he was surprised I shared family matters on Reddit and that he wouldn't have done it. He said he wasn't feeling depressed, just tired and exhausted after years of working, and he just wanted to be childish for a bit and really enjoyed the month off. I kind of understood because we used to travel a lot before our daughter was born, and life has been harder since then. I told him I wouldn't force him to work and that he could take his time as long as he could pick up our daughter and do the housework. He hesitated, but told me not to worry. I thought this was the end of it. Then, the next day, I came home from work to find his mother there. I was shocked because he hadn't told me anything. She started picking up our daughter and doing the housework. This is driving me crazy because I have never gotten along with her. Well, and my husband knows this. I feel like he asked her to come so he could continue being childish, disregarding how I feel. His mother raised him as a single mom, and according to my husband, she was very protective and planned to live with him for his whole life. He felt suffocated, so he went to a university far from home and reduced contact with her. I remember one time she came and got sick, vomited, and I cleaned up her mess. Suddenly, she asked her son to come and told him that her underwear was dirty and needed to be washed by hand that very night, even though we had a washing machine. My husband and I had agreed that our marriage was ours and that she wouldn't come and live with us. He broke his promise. I'm considering divorce, but I'm worried our daughter is too young to understand it. I've thought about holding on for a while, but these days of living with her are already driving me crazy, and I don't see a quick end. I've thought about being in awe and forcing her to leave, but that might lead to divorce. I really need some advice. Thank you all. TL. Dr. I 36F showed my husband 37M the last post, and we had a talk. Then, without asking me, he invited my mother-in-law to come, even though he knows I've never gotten along well with her. Story 10. Wib 2. If I tell HR about my past with a new coworker? I 34M am a lead developer on a team of mid-sized SaaS company that has around 100 or so employees. Basically, we are large enough that there are employees we can see, recognize, but not necessarily know their names. Recently, we had a new hire, Krista 33F, who joined the PM part of the project I am working on. I have a history with Krista from college. In college, I was a lot more in my own shell. I didn't really treat myself well, and was very much the introverted nerd, down to bad posture and poor fashion sense. Krista, she did have quite a few friends in college, but at least in my view, she wasn't super popular, but she was well liked and was conventionally attractive. We shared a few classes together and one day asked me for some help on an assignment. I helped her on it and we talked, and from the sound of things, she seemed genuinely friendly to me. I helped her on a few more assignments and finally she asked me if I wanted to meet her after class at a coffee shop and talk. I said sure, and when I got there, Krista was nowhere in sight. I waited about 20 minutes before I called her. She answered and started laughing, and I heard several other voices laughing. Krista saying something like, "Why would I want to date a fat loser like you?" Looked out the front window of the shop and saw one of Krista's friends holding up her camera phone and it looked like she was recording. Next few weeks there were jokes about me, flyers with my face from the coffee shop vid plastered up with "creep" in bold letters on top. Kept my head down, and within a month the next big thing popped up on campus and I was forgotten. Didn't stop Krista and her friends from going ew, creep, when they saw me, but I guess for the rest of the campus it got old, so I never got accused of anything, or even really ostracized by the rest of the student body. After college, I did learn about self-care a bit better, plus I usually am with other programmers, so I really don't stand out as a social outcast. When Krista was introduced to our team, I don't think she recognized me, and it's only been a week. But I want to know if bringing up the college incident is even worth it for our. Most of my rational brain really wants to just let this go, treat Krista as a new person, and get on with me. But I have a small fear that she might tell a skewed version of the college events and sour the team I'm on against me, so I should at least disclose to our. So in case she does start telling tales, I have recourse. Reddit, Wib2 if I told HR about my past with Krista. Update. Yesterday some things happened, some bad, mostly good. There were mixed responses, most telling me to tell, but one HR professional saying I shouldn't. Due to the mixed messaging, I did consult a local employment lawyer. The lawyer told me that I should make HR aware of the past I have with Krista, but make it clear that there was never anything disciplinary acted upon me in college. He asked if my job had a copy of my transcript, and I verified that it did. Lawyer asked if there were any third parties that would verify the harassment and see if I could get their names and contact details if needed. I knew 2 people back in college that I still had on my LinkedIn and was certain they would tell the truth, so we were good there. Lawyer told me to just request a meeting with HR and my supervisor, say there was a past with Krista, there was never any charges or disciplinary action, and I have 2 witnesses if they ever need verification. So that was what I did. Friday morning I came into the office and sent HR and my supervisor an email requesting a formal meeting at 10 a.m. My supervisor came to my desk and asked if everything was okay and wanted to make sure I was happy. I told him everything was fine, I wasn't leaving, and it wasn't anything with him or the team. He seemed relieved and by 10 a.m., we rolled into the conference room with the HR officer. I thanked them both for taking time out of their day to meet me, and then I did as my lawyer instructed. I said that the new project manager, Krista, was someone I went to college with. She participated in harassment of me in college, detailed how I never had any charges or disciplinary action, and that I had 2 independent witnesses that saw the harassment and gave their contact info. My supervisor seemed shocked and the HR officer went through the info I gave her for a minute and then the 2 of them talked for a minute. Finally, Krista was called in. When Krista walked into the conference room and saw me, HR, and the team's supervisor, she seemed shocked. HR started with something like, "We have been told you to have a past." Krista sat down and looked pretty shocked throughout. She did admit to the bullying, but tried to reframe it as a misunderstanding repeatedly. She never outright said what the bullying was, but then she was told that since this was an incident in both our pasts that nobody wants brought up again, that it should stay dead. HR made it clear that this is not to be a funny watercolor story to share. Krista and I both agreed to that, but Krista still looked shaken. Noon was coming up right when the meeting was wrapping up. My supervisor and HR again reiterated, "Neither of us is to breathe a word about the college incident. We're professionals, and we're here to do a job." I went to the break room for lunch, and actually, I felt like my appetite has finally returned. The last few days were stress-starving me, to be honest. I sat at a table with the rest of the development team and we started eating. Halfway through my sandwich, another coworker, Sandy 30F, came by and said, "So I heard an interesting story yesterday about you and Krista," with a big grin on her face. She didn't get further because my supervisor was at our table, stood up, pointed at Sandy, and across the room at Krista, and said, "You too." Conference room. Now, I wasn't privy to what happened in the conference room, but I did see the HR officer go into the room 2 minutes later, looking pretty pissed and with a mustard stain on her shirt. I guess she got the call and was interrupted during lunch. Not sure what went on. The rest of my team asked what that was. I said I have no idea and just kept eating. 5 minutes later, 2 more co-workers on other parts of the project were brought into the conference room. Lunch ended and we went back to work, but speculation was high. It wasn't until 3 that the conference room finally emptied. Krista looked like she was crying, and the others that were in the room with her seemed to treat her quite coldly. Not sure what this will mean, but it appears for now, Krista is still working here, but I appreciate the lengths HR and my supervisor are taking to ensure this won't blow up further. Story 11. Aita for following through on my threat of divorcing my wife if she didn't start taking care of herself. I am 49 years old. My wife is 48. We have been married for 23 years. When I first met my wife in college, she was energetic, fun, and simply radiant. Her love of life was infectious. We would go hiking, eat at restaurants, go to theme parks, take walks on beaches, and everything else. We both loved the outdoors. About 3 years after we got married, my wife started changing. Instead of going out, she began to become something of a couch potato. She gained weight, started sleeping less, stopped cooking, and frankly became kind of a slob. I put up with this for years. I started cooking on most nights, and I had to hide vegetables in her food for her to eat them. I started doing the dishes every night because I knew she wouldn't. When I went grocery shopping, I abstained from buying my favorite and healthy foods because I knew she would devour them within hours. I tried to encourage her to start taking care of her health. Nothing changed. 10 years ago, I finally reached my breaking point. I sat her down and gave her an ultimatum. Start taking care of your health, because if it falls apart, I'm not going to be here to take care of you. She was very upset with me, saying in sickness and in health my ass repeatedly, but I told her I didn't care. Again, nothing changed. I've stayed active. I go jogging every day and maintain a healthy weight, but over the past 5 years, she has reached a point where she frankly kind of disgusts me at times. It takes her 5 minutes or more to get up from her typical position of lying down on the sofa. She has started waddling hunched over. She's 48, but she honestly looks 10 years older and acts 25 years old. A month ago, I finally got her to go to the doctor. Another one of her reckless behaviors is never going in for checkups. They discovered that she's on the verge of type 2 diabetes, has a mild case of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and her blood pressure is concerningly high. Naturally, after receiving such news, on the way home from the hospital she swung by a fast food restaurant to get some food and a shake. The other day I sat her down and told her that I simply refuse to be a caretaker for someone who's not even 50 yet. I told her I would be filing for divorce, but left how we do it either through lawyers or through a cooperative splitting of assets up to her. She's absolutely furious with me, and my parents seem to be on her side. Story 12. Aita for wanting a bit of space from my daughter after I discovered she isn't mine biologically. I'm 40, she is 16, and I've been divorced from her mother since she was about a year old. We've always had a good relationship and never had any reason to doubt she's mine. Her mother recently let it slip she might not be mine, and we did a DNA test and she's right, no biological relationship whatsoever. After confronting my ex, she broke down and confessed that when we were dating, she went on a night out with her colleagues and ended up in bed with a guy she worked with. She is trying to say she was probably drugged or something, as she was a lot more drunk than she should have been and woke up in bed with him with no memory of sleeping with him. She panicked and feared what I'd say. She just tried to ignore it and hope she was mine, as she always felt like she looked like me. Apparently, the biological father is some French guy who's married and has kids. And I vaguely remember him from when we were together. I didn't like him. He seemed sleazy, but put it down to him just being French anyway. It's fucked me up good and proper, and it also has fucked my daughter up. It's giving me some seriously dark thoughts, and I just want to take a bit of time to myself and go no contact for a short while. Not to punish her in any way or be horrible, but I just need to clear my head and get some help before I see her again. I know she isn't to blame and don't want to hurt her at all, but I feel I can't be a dad to her while I'm struggling like this. She didn't take that well at all, and I guess has told people, and so many people are trying to get in touch. Tell me what an arsehole I am and shouldn't do anything I will regret. I'm just muting everyone, including her, so I can think. I'm thinking of quitting my job and selling my house to go traveling for a bit and just see the world before I come back and face it all. Could even take a trip to France, if you know what I mean. Aita for taking the space and not having contact with her in the meantime. Story 13. Aita for telling my mom she ruined my life by marrying my stepdad. I 19F have been living with my mom 44F, brother 17M and stepdad 49M since my parents got divorced when I was 7. Before marrying my stepdad, my mom was married to my dad for 10 years. Needless to say, it was a very abusive marriage, and my mom has been a victim of DV. She was also the sole breadwinner of our house, so when she divorced him, me and my brother were very relieved. Shortly after divorcing my dad, my mom married my stepdad, and they had a son together, my half-brother 7M. The issue? I never really got along with my dad since he always wanted a boy and I was the first child, a girl. He was also very abusive and once hit me on my head with a golf stick. That was the last straw, and my mom left him soon after. So when my mom remarried, I was very open to the idea of having my stepdad fill in the shoes of my father. I really tried my best to get along with him, and we did too. We'd go on picnics and vacations, and he'd spoil me with expensive gifts and toys. I will admit I wasn't very happy with the idea of welcoming a stranger into our lives so soon, especially after all the trauma we had induced previously, but I also realized my mom was very happy, so I found my way through the arrangement. Few years into their marriage, my stepdad started sexually abusing me. He'd lock me up in the bathroom and touch me inappropriately and say it was a bonding activity essential for us to get along. This went on for a couple of years until I was 11, and I finally decided to tell my mom about what was happening when he RD'd me while she was away for work. I felt disgusted and could no longer keep quiet for my mom's happiness. When I told her, she was devastated. She apologized for not seeing the signs sooner and for not being able to protect me. She resented him for what he did, but never confronted him. He had no idea that she knew. Even though I expected her to leave him after all of this, she didn't, citing financial difficulties and that she had finally found peace in her life after my dad. I don't know what she told him, but he stopped harassing me after that. Things haven't been cordial between me and my stepdad since then. As I grew older, I understood the intensity of what had happened to me and started to resent my mom for not only staying with him, but having a child with him. A year after I told her, fast forward, I moved out for college and barely go home as I feel disgusted to be around my monster of a stepdad. But now my mom demands I speak to him and amend my relationship with him because he sponsors my education as well as my brother's. She also told me that I should be grateful for all she has done for me and give her a break because she is finally happy in her life with a partner that takes care of her needs and respects her, and that I wouldn't have all the means to spend a lavish lifestyle like I do if not for her husband. She said she's sorry for all that's happened with me, but she's made up for it by giving me this life, education, and basically bringing me up all on her own, especially since my own father didn't want to have me. She further went on to ask me to forgive him and move on in life because that's the best thing to do for all of us as a family. I was enraged upon hearing this and told her she failed as a mother and also failed as a human by saying all these things to me, especially after I've spent my entire life sacrificing my mental health for her happiness and the sake of my brothers. I also told her that she chose to marry my pathetic father and continued to stay in an abusive marriage and birth children with an abusive person. I also told her that she fucked up even more by marrying my stepdad and ruining my life. Even though I know what I said was absolutely right, I feel I have hurt my mom as she refuses to talk to me now. And I feel bad for being so harsh with my words for her, since she's already been through so much for me and my siblings. Aita, edit. I noticed a few comments about taking financial help from my stepdad, who is also my abuser. I would like to clear out that my mom still works and pays for my education, but she works under him, so it's technically still his money account to him. And my mom. Also, I wasn't aware he was paying for my tuition. I thought that was my mom until she told me that she asked him to pay and he's been bearing the financial expenses. Also, by a lavish lifestyle, my mom means 3 meals a day, decent clothes, and my tuition and dorm fees. My maternal grandparents had set up a fund for my education before passing, but that was all used up by my mom and her husband while I was still in school, and their only excuse was that it wasn't my money since I didn't earn it and that it belonged to my mother since her mother, my grandmother, set it up for me. Story 14. Aita for calling my sister's doctor a scumbag. So, for context, I, 36 meters, have a younger sister, 26F. We were born 10 years and 2 months apart. Our mother died when I was 18 and I had to drop out of college to take custody of my little sister. We didn't have a father growing up, so I took the responsibility of treating my sister how I thought a man should treat her. I spoiled her and never let anyone mistreat her. Now for where I may be an asshole. My sister had her first baby at 23. She had HG really bad, which, if you don't know, is a rare condition pregnant women get that causes uncontrollable nausea and vomiting. She had to be hospitalized for the first 4 months of her pregnancy. She had to have a GI tube and lost 80 pounds in 3 months. It was horrible. We were told she wouldn't make it if the condition kept up. She pulled through, but she was scared to get pregnant again. Fast forward, and my sister is now pregnant with her second baby, but she has HG again and it's about as bad as her first. She has been in the hospital for the last couple of months, losing weight, and has more or less been unconscious the whole time. She was awake yesterday and a new doctor came in. I've never met this man. He kept ignoring my sister and talking to her husband. Her husband kept looking to my sister and kept trying to direct the doctor to talk to my sister as she was the one going through the HG. After a while, he finally acknowledged my sister, but kept rolling his eyes at the things she said. I know my sister saw this, but she kept trying to talk. I just watched in silence, and the doctor directed his attention to me before asking if I could verify if any of what she was saying was true. I asked him what he meant by that. He said that women's emotional state during pregnancy is not considered valid due to how out of balance their hormones are. They can become dramatic and can't fully be taken at their word. My sister was on the verge of tears but didn't say anything. I was furious that her husband didn't defend her. Now I'm like 6'4", 240 pounds. I tower over this man. I stood up and got in his face demanding a new doctor. He told me I needed to calm down and take a seat. I got more angry and said he needed to stop being a scumbag of a doctor and find us someone else to look after my sister. That I wasn't going to allow a man to talk about my sister like she wasn't there and disregard her condition that she's obviously being hospitalized for. He left and we got a female doctor a few hours later. My sister didn't say anything, but her husband called me an asshole for getting in the doctor's face. I explained that the only good thing he did was try to direct the doctor to talk to my sister, but failed as a husband to defend her when the doctor basically said she was faking everything. Hospital security did have to talk to me and explain they understood I was upset but that I'd be asked to leave if I had an outburst like that again. Well, an update a lot sooner than I planned, but needed. Sister's husband may be ex-husband soon. So even though I'm a huge advocate for my sister, I still have a job. I work overnights and partial days to help provide for my sister and niece since she's been unable to work for a while. This morning, I came back to the hospital with breakfast and heard my sister screaming from her room. I rushed in and found my sister in hysterics. The male doctor from yesterday was standing by the back wall, just rolling his eyes with my sister's husband by him. I, of course, got pissed off and demanded to know why he was in my sister's room. In a comment yesterday, I mentioned how the doctor asked my sister if she was going to get a hysterectomy after this baby, and she said yes. The doctor rolled his eyes at her. My sister, through her tears, explained that her husband had come in and talked to the doctor and that both of them ganged up on her to convince her not to have a hysterectomy. She said they told her that she was too young and that her husband obviously wanted more than 2 kids, and it was her responsibility to give that to him. I am my sister's POA, so they'd either have to go through her or me. And since my sister doesn't normally stand up for herself, they thought they could bully her into changing her mind. Keep in mind my sister is only 6 months along, so she still has time before the baby is due, but not much. I called security and asked that both my bill and the doctor be removed. I also called the police. I'm going to see if I can file charges on the doctor because what he did was horrible and disgusting. My sister told Bill that he wasn't allowed back to the hospital and said she would get a protection order if she had to. Several calls were made to Mill, who I guess ripped Bill a new one. I asked my boss if I could take a little time off work so I could stay with my sister full time to ensure this doesn't happen again. Mill has niece and has told Bill he isn't allowed around her until he gets his head on right and begs my sister for forgiveness. Edit to add, I called police because the doctor was told he was not allowed to go into my sister's room until the hospital did an investigation for the complaint I filed yesterday. Not only did he go against instructions from his bosses, but he refused to leave when my sister begged him and Bill to. What they did was borderline harassment. Edit to add, there's a lot of legal shit that I've had to go through since my sister's first pregnancy due to the fact she nearly died and she and Bill weren't married yet. I, however, am not obligated to go into every aspect of those details for this post. I've looked up the law, and I've talked to lawyers. I'm aware there are parts of the story that are missing or may not make sense, and I apologize if that causes you to think I'm lying. I assure you there is a lot, and I mean a lot going on behind the scenes and have been for years that I can't get into. And in no way, shape, or form am I or even my sister done with any of this. This could take weeks, months even. Hey guys, sorry for not posting an update. The last few days since my last one have been hectic and stress-filled. I want to start off by saying thank you to everyone. The amount of support, understanding, and kindness my sister and I have gotten has been incredibly nice given how rough the situation has been. I had a meeting with the hospital CEO, their lawyers, myself, my lawyer, and a few others. I was first asked if I intended to file a lawsuit. I told them yes, but mainly against the doctor who is employed under them. I expressed that he was really the only issue we've had here, but that I'd take this situation to court if need be. My lawyer presented theirs with written notes from other hospital staff, mainly females, about various aspects of his behavior towards them and other unnamed female patients. While I wasn't able to get information about the patients he'd done similar things to due to HIPAA, the nurses were more than willing to offer their support. These notes ranged from sexual harassment, misogynistic comments,
and behaviors to threats of having some of these girls fired. The hospital read over everything, and they appeared disgusted over what they were reading. From my understanding, most complaints made against this man were dropped before they ever reached the CEO, who acted like they had no idea this was happening. I was asked what I wanted out of this meeting. I told them I wanted the jerk fired and his medical license revoked.
I also wanted him blacklisted from every hospital possible, so he couldn't do this again. I know it may seem harsh, but he could have caused damage to my sister and her baby. I informed them I had already made calls to my sister's insurance company and the state medical board. The hospital's CEO informed me they were aware of the call to the medical board, hence part of why this meeting was happening. I was then told that the doctor would be fired immediately and that they and the medical board would deal with his medical license. I was honestly happy with that. Thinking we were done, I was ready to leave. I wanted to get back to my sister. I was asked to remain seated. I had an envelope pushed towards me, which had a few sheets of paper. Long story short, I was offered a settlement if I agreed not to take this to court, and they would handle the doctor. I won't say how much, but it was a pretty penny. I was told it was for my sister's pain and suffering as well as emotional damage. My lawyer said I should take it as long as they held up their end of the deal. I was promised they would, but we'll see. Edit. There probably won't be an update for a while due to mainly wanting to focus on my sister's health and dealing with other shit. I promise that when there is a break or something, I will update, but I can't promise when that'll be. Thank you again for all the support. I don't have any updates yet about my bill, but I'll make another update as soon as I know more. Thank you again, everyone. There is obviously a lot more legal shit that's gotta happen, but I wanted to give y'all the short of it because otherwise, I'd be here forever. So please don't come into my comments saying it doesn't happen that fast or it's not that easy. I'm aware, but I don't want to be typing out every single aspect of that meeting. My husband and I don't want a man to be charged with SA against my minor daughter, Aita. Okay, hear me out. As this issue has divided my family, I 41F and my husband 42M have been married for almost 18 years and have 3 kids. The child in question is 16 years old. When she was 14, she came to us and said she was pregnant. We were very concerned, of course, and asked who the father was. She did not say, even after us asking repeatedly for months. We also gently asked if someone had assaulted or groped her and insisted she could be honest. We explained we loved her, but needed to know. She never told us and went through with having the baby. Thankfully, she had a healthy pregnancy. We pulled her out of school and told her we would be there for her and our grandchild. 8 months ago, the baby got really sick. A blood treatment was needed, but due to it having a rare blood antigen issue, basic donations were not helpful. Our family was all tested and no one had it. So we needed the baby's father. Our daughter was still reluctant to tell us after all this time. We explained this was no longer about her, but saving her child. She finally told us the guy's name and that he was currently a senior at the local college and 21 at the time she got pregnant. Of course, we were upset at him and understood why she felt scared as she was taken advantage of. We went to the police and he was arrested. A DNA test was done and he was a match as the dad and the blood. Our grandchild was able to saved. The guy, however, said he had no idea our daughter was 14. He stated that he met her at the college. They met at the library, saw each other at some parties, had sex a couple of times, and then he stopped hearing from her. For context, the woman in my family, even me, started developing really early. By 14, my daughter does have the body of a young woman but a younger face. With some makeup, she does look older, which is why we always encouraged her that she didn't need it. After pleading with her to tell us the truth, she finally did. Her and some friends would go to the library at the college to check out guys. She had a fake ID and did go to several parties at the school when she was supposed to be at her friend's house. She met him and lied about being a freshman at the college. After she got pregnant, she stopped talking to him. The police want to press charge, as do other people in my family. But we feel that this is unfair to him, as my daughter lied to him and put herself in this situation. Both of them say it was consensual, and she even showed some videos she took of them together. Are we wrong, Aita, for not telling my parents that the event they were missing was my wedding? Buckle up, guys. This will be kinda long. SOI 27F have a younger brother, Mike 21M. He is the definition of a man-child and a mama's boy, always complaining, always expecting others to bow to him. Just overall, an asshole. Ever since he was born, my parents fussed over him for everything. He's not special needs, or had a traumatic birth or anything of the sort. He was just born, and my parents completely discarded me. My mom 50F especially. She went from a loving mother to one of those boy moms that people make fun of on the internet. My father 50M still showed me love and support, but he's always been too much of a coward to stand up to my mother and let me win at least once. The only one who stood for me was my grandpa 76M, who always called my parents out on their bullshit and never liked my brother. I remind him of his late wife, my grandma, and we have a very special bond, but he lives on the other side of the country and I could never see him often. Mike knows our mom prefers him and loves to shove it in my face. Because of this and his behavior, we've always been at odds. He's spoiled, a brat, and an awful human. I can't remember how many times I ended up in trouble for things I did better than him or for things he framed me with. His only talent are his football skills. He won a scholarship to a nice college out of state. My parents didn't spend a dime on my education because apparently my fund had been used to cover expenses after a fire, just for me to discover years later that said money were given to Mike to buy a car and a house, It's at public university that I met Lucas. He was the first person I was really drawn to there. Of course, I met new people who are now my dearest friends. And thanks to them and Lucas, who was my best friend for years before we got together, I managed to move out of my parents' house. Now both Lucas and I are well known in our fields and have very good salaries. Now, to the main issue. Lucas proposed to me a year ago. We're very private people, so we didn't post it on social media or anything. And when I told my parents, they dismissed it with a "that's nice." I'm starting to think they downright didn't listen to me at all. We decided that we wanted a nice but simple ceremony and reception with our friends and relatives. Lucas convinced me to invite my parents and brother, but they never responded to the invite. And whenever I went to visit and began to talk about my wedding without mentioning it was a wedding, my mom would always speak over me and about my brother's accomplishments and wild adventures. At one point, I got fed up with it and interrupted my mom to tell her that there was an event I was planning to organize, whose date was unmovable. She told me that they couldn't attend because my brother was playing the last game of the season that very same day and wanted them to be there. Of course, this favoritism didn't surprise me. They missed my ballets, shows, and both my high school and university graduation for things about him. At this point, I wanted to be petty. I told both my parents that it wasn't a problem to miss this event, purposely omitted the fact that this event was my wedding, and didn't insist further. Flash forward to a few weeks ago, I got married. It was perfect. My family, Lucas' family, and our friends were all there, and we had a blast. My grandpa was happy to give me away, and it was just perfect. My relatives asked me multiple times why my parents weren't there with us. I was honest and simply said they had my brother's game to attend and couldn't come. They gave me a few looks, and my grandpa was visibly angry for a while, but otherwise nothing strange happened. After the reception, Lucas and I left for our honeymoon and were phone-free for the whole duration of the trip. But once we got back, we discovered that a shit storm was welcoming us home. I turned my phone on and was unable to even unlock it before a storm of notifications popped up. Most of them were from my mother and brother. Mike called me all sorts of nasty names and insulted me because, apparently, one of my paternal aunts posted the photos of the wedding on Facebook and captioned it with a very obvious dig at my parents, especially my mom, for missing the wedding. The post apparently went viral in my parents' community, and they've been publicly shamed for their mistreatment of me. It also turns out that my grandpa personally visited my parents to go on a tirade to shame my father, his son, to the point of tears. And this seemed to be my father's breaking point, because he was so distraught for missing his only daughter's wedding and for his father's disapproval, that he finally rebelled against my mom and is threatening divorce unless she makes it up to me. I think that's the reason why my mom has been spamming my phone with messages, at first insulting and threatening and then downright pitiful, full of begging and pity parties. Now I'm at home with my husband, deciding how to approach the situation. Most of my relatives, even those I didn't invite to the wedding, reached out to apologize for what I went through and to claim they had no idea this was happening at home. Can't blame any of my relatives. They all live with my grandpa on the other side of the country or in another state, but my mom's sisters and friends are belittling me for not telling my mom about the wedding, because now she's inconsolable at the thought of having missed my wedding. Personally, I think she just claims that to save face, but I'm not sure. The latest messages from my father and mother seem extremely saddened and hurt for missing my wedding. Now my family is divided on three fronts. The majority who is sticking by my side, my maternal aunts shaming me for hurting my mom's feelings, and my maternal grandparents, who are adamant that I forgive my mom in light of her atonement. My best friends are telling me not to listen to them. So, Reddit, Aita, edit. Thank you so much for the feedback and love. It's overwhelming. I'm going to address the popular questions here. 1. I did inform my parents about my wedding. I sent traditional on-paper invites to all my guests and was notified that all invites had reached their addressees. I did not receive any answer from my parents and Mike, a few very distant relatives, and some people on Lucas' side. I did reach out to all of them through message to double-check, and those who hadn't replied told me they couldn't come. I asked my parents and brother via text, but they didn't respond. I was left on read. Knowing them and given all the things I had to plan, I didn't bother insisting. 2. I didn't repeat the date of my wedding because I had already been told there was my brother's game. Plus, every time I insisted on highlighting my celebrations to get an answer, I was always told that it wasn't that important and to not be PC and a bother, because some things were simply more important than me. At this point, I think it's fair for me to not insist anymore. It's not worth the effort. 3. I didn't keep my wedding a secret. I avoided telling my parents that it was my wedding to see if they would be interested in the slightest. But surprise, surprise, they weren't. Despite this, I did openly talk about my wedding with my aunts and uncles. My mother was in the room with us a few times when I discussed venues or dress shops with my aunt, the FB post one, but sometimes mom was on the phone, and other times she was just chatting with other people. She never paid attention. When I talked about it during reunions, she smiled and said, "That's great, dear," and then would change the subject. Radio silence on Dad and Mike. 4. I kept in contact with them because, well, all the times I tried to go NC in the past years, I've been harassed. I tried after my H's, bachelor's and master's graduations, to which they never bothered to show up for reasons involving my brother. Every time I was shamed for daring to turn my back on family by my parents, my brother, my maternal aunts, and my maternal grandparents. I think the turning point here is that, all those times, Lucas wasn't by my side. We started dating a little after my last attempt at going NC, and, how that I have him here, I feel more confident in my stance. But before that, I want this confident. As I already stated, all my paternal side lives on the other side of the country and wasn't aware of how they treated me. I did try to expose my parents once at 14. My aunts, uncles, and grandpa reprimanded them. They faked being sorry, and then once home, I got the beating and gaslighting of my life for lying. After that, Elle kept in contact regularly with my paternal side, but omitting my parents' abuse out of fear, which TBH still haunts me to this day. Only Grandpa knew, but he was always threatened to be alienated from me if he tried anything. 5. My parents and I are not from the same city. I live an hour drive from them, and they don't know my new address because once, my brother tried to break in my apartment to steal some cash and my mother backed him up, claiming that siblings share their goods. Now I moved, and I'll be sure not to tell them where I live. 6. My parents didn't buy my brother a car and a house before he even started high school. They bought him a car for his 16th birthday and a house near his college when he began freshman year. They didn't spend the money of my fund right away. They just lied to me to use it later for my brother, keeping it stored for later in the meantime.